Alright, welcome to this very special Memorial Day edition of my religious life for the sixth Sunday of Easter. And here's my observation. And I will, let's see. Here it is. And here it is. Here it is. So here it is, because I hope you get inside the season finale of my religious life video blog, and I'm about to say it's gonna be cool. Anyways, this is from John chapter 1. No. John chapter 5, verses 1 through 9. And here it is. Jesus healed on the Sabbath. After this, you guessed it, was a festival of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. And I'll put this down just in case. So trust me about that as well. So here we go. Because after this, there was a festival of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. And now Jerusalem is by the sheep gate. There is a pool called in Hebrew Bethesda, which has 5 porticos. In these lay many invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. And one man was there who had been ill for 38 years. And when Jesus saw him lying there, and knew that he had been there for a long time, he said to him, yes. He said to him, do you want to be made well? The sick man answered him, Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. And while I'm making a way, someone else to step down ahead of me. Jesus said to him, stand up, take your mat and walk. And once the man was made well, and he took up his mat and began to walk. Now that day was a Sabbath. Well, it makes sense. And so here's my observation for you. Because Deacon Betsy at my church last Sunday morning, and you know why? It's reflected on this one, so you just regard that as far as we're concerned about all this, that's why. And it's gonna be perfect, because everything else keeps civilized about this one, so who knows. So that's why Deacon Betsy does the sermon at my church at 33rd Belvedere. And you know why? It makes me nice to people. So here's my observation about Jesus healing the Sabbath day on John chapter 5. And it's because the healing of the man at the pool of the Bethesda brings to the surface of a controversial familiar from Matthew, Mark, and Luke. That's all of these three chapters, and it makes a lot of sense about this one because Jesus had chance for healing on the Sabbath. If the controversial is familiar, however, Jesus' self-defense is taking a slightly different angle, and his lengthy argument is crisply summarized in John chapter 5. Because my Father is still working, and I am also working. The principle is clear, and God keeps the creation going even on the Sabbath. And therefore, Jesus, who shared the divine identity, is permitted to do the same. Jesus was also certainly alone. Alone. And the only thing that happens, is alone. And, oh yes. And principle is clear, and the principle is clear, and God keeps the creation going, even on the Sabbath. And therefore, Jesus who shares the divine identity. So what's the divine identity stands for? Stands for is permitted to do the same thing as Jesus was also certainly not alone in a huge argument that God was on the Sabbath, but his deduction about justifying his own work is unique. And as a result, we cannot use this whole story to reduce the propriety or improbability of our, you guessed it, working on the Sabbath. And we may be doing God's work, but we do not share the divine identity as Christ does. So what is human work having, you guessed it, life or death consequences? Well, military, Memorial Day, brave men and women, and everybody knows that's been self-defense or pulling an animal from a ditch. Oh gosh. Except a cat pulling out, talk about. Yeah, But anyways, it was already accepted on a legitimate on the Sabbath. And the healing is not questionable in this episode, even though the man who would suffered no harm had Jesus wait until Sunday to heal him. Instead, Jesus is criticizing for permitting him to carry a mat, a form of work, according to the Jewish law, and on the Sabbath. Does this imply that Jesus permits us to drive to vacation on the Sabbath? Well, except if you fly on an airplane going over to from Omaha all the way up to Atlanta, Georgia, or whatever happens. Well, that simply is going to be obvious. But flying on a Sunday to a business meeting, or you see your parents' relatives, oh gosh. It begins, you guessed it, on Monday morning, when Memorial Day holiday comes around, and it's going to be civilized about this one. Trust me. But it operates a continuous casting plant 24/7, 365 days a year. Well, I bet Anita Baker does this. It's the same old love. There is no hint here that Jesus is merely writing the list of activities permitted on the Sabbath, but instead let us apply the theme we see running through John, working that maintains and redeemed, to the theme of creation, material or spiritual, and contributes to closer relationships with God and people, and is appropriate for the Sabbath. Whether any particular work fulfills this description, and must be discerned by the persons who involved in this. Yes. To wrap this up, a clearer and more important lesson from this narrative is that God is still at work. Father Jason says God is at work at my church days. Talk about this one. God is at. Thank you, Father Jason. You know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying. Because the main theme of this present creation and Jesus further that working in this healing ministry. And that's why Jesus' signs are at one level to another in the breaking of the new world. I bet they demonstrate. Well, they demonstrate the powers of the age to come. At the same time, they are also the upkeeping of the present world. And it seems perfectly appropriate to see this paradigm for our own merit jobs, and as we act in faith to restore what was been broken, such as doctors, nurses, baristas at Starbucks or Zozo Coffee House, or scooters, auto mechanics, and podcasters like me, and my conservative friends and all that stuff. So as Father Jason does podcast, as far as we're concerned, and others, and so forth and so on. So here's my observation. We are calling to the people to remember the goodness of the Creator God, and as we act in faith to develop to the capacity of the creation as programmers, teachers, artists, musicians like me, and so on. And as we call to the people to reflect on the goodness and of God's humility, God's humanity given dominion over the world. So that's pretty simple. And you know the moral of my religious life video blog story is this. You guessed it. That's right. Sixth Sunday of Easter, and that is the work of redemption and the work of creation, production done in faith. Both shout out our trust in the God who is, and who was, and who is to come. And God created all things through Christ, is restoring to his original intent through Christ. And guess what? It will bring them to their appointed goal through Christ. Sounds simple to you? on the 6th Sunday of Easter. That's all I can say. Think about it. And that's my religious life video blog story, and I'm sticking to it. We'll be right back with hashtag Omo Choirs, only on Facebook Watch, after these important sponsors. Stay right there.